1970s were a decade when anything could become a hit. Artists recorded songs about disco dancing ducks, Egyptian pharaohs, streaking, and truck drivers speaking in code.
Yes, I like Pina Colada.
Nobody took them seriously, not even the people who made them, but they climbed the charts, sold millions, and became the soundtrack of a generation. Today, we count down 14 joke songs from the 70s that turned into global smashes. Rick Dees was a Memphis radio disc jockey who wrote a novelty track spoofing the disco craze. The quacking voice was performed by a guy from his gym who could do a cartoon duck impression, recorded for less than $200. Dees spent 3 months trying to get anyone to release it. His own radio station fired him just for mentioning the song on air, citing a conflict of interest. 5 days later, the track hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It sold over 4 million copies, and even showed up in the film Saturday Night Fever. What was the first thing that crossed your mind the very first time you heard a duck quacking over a disco beat?
Oh, yes, they call him the streak. Fastest thing.
14. The Streak by Ray Stevens. In 1974, running naked through public places had become a genuine cultural phenomenon. The craze reached its peak when a man ran across the stage during the Academy Awards on live television. Ray Stevens read about it in a magazine while flying and knew it would make a perfect song. He wrote it fast and rushed into the studio. The track featured Stevens playing multiple characters, including a frantic husband trying to shield his wife from the streaker. The punchline came at the end, when the wife decided to join in herself. It became one of the defining novelty singles of the decade and captured a moment in American culture that was as bizarre as it was unforgettable.
Wound up down by the swimming hole, and she said,
Jim Stafford co-wrote this with David Bellamy, pulling the lyrics from Bellamy's childhood on a Florida farm where boys tried to impress girls with frogs and snakes. The song told the story of a shy young man whose idea of romance was waving a frog in a girl's face. The verses were spoken rather than sung, giving it a storytelling charm that worked for both country and pop audiences. It spent 26 weeks on the American charts and peaked at #3.
by the swimming hole, and she said, do what you want to do.
In Canada, it went all the way to #1 and sold over 1 million copies, proving that a simple country tale about childhood crushes could connect with people far beyond the back roads of Florida.
When I make my way to the tubby, I find...
This started as a simple segment on the children's show Sesame Street. Jim Henson's character Ernie sang a cheerful ode to his yellow bath toy, and nobody expected it to travel beyond preschool television.
I find a little fella who's cute.
But parents could not stop humming it, and kids demanded to hear it on repeat. Released as a single in 1970, it climbed to #16 on the Billboard Hot 100 and sold over 1 million copies. A puppet singing about bath time had outcharted most serious musicians that year. Be honest, can you still hum this melody from start to finish without even thinking about it?
When I stopped off in the vestibule,
Chuck Berry had been a rock and roll legend since the 50s, but had never landed a #1 single. That changed in 1972 with the most unlikely song imaginable. At a festival in Coventry, England, he performed a playful track loaded with double meanings, and the crowd sang along with enormous enthusiasm. The whole show was being recorded because Pink Floyd was scheduled to play next. That live recording went to #1 in the United Kingdom and became the only chart-topping hit of Berry's entire career. It was a 4th grade sing-along about a toy that everyone knew was not really about a toy at all. When asked about it years later, Berry simply said, "Give people what they want."
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Carl Douglas walked into a London studio in 1974 to record a completely different song. This track was written as a throwaway to fill the back of the single and was laid down in roughly 10 minutes at the end of the session. But martial arts films were exploding in popularity thanks to Bruce Lee, and the timing could not have been more perfect. Radio stations grabbed it immediately, and it spread like wildfire across the globe. It hit #1 in both the United States and the United Kingdom, sold over 11 million copies, and became one of the best-selling singles of the entire decade. A 10-minute afterthought turned into a worldwide phenomenon.
Started out this morning feeling so light.
Bill Danoff got the idea after spotting a happy hour menu titled Afternoon Delights at a restaurant in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. He spent 6 months shaping it into a harmony piece, loaded with suggestive double meanings that sailed right over most listeners' heads. Released in the summer of 1976, it reached #1 right as America celebrated its 200th birthday.
And the thought of loving you is getting so exciting.
Many listeners assumed it was simply about fireworks and patriotic celebrations, which fit perfectly with the bicentennial mood. It won 2 Grammy Awards, including Best New Artist, beating out Boston for that honor. The group even landed a television variety show featuring a then-unknown David Letterman as a regular. An advertising executive named Bill Fries created a fictional trucker character for a bread commercial and decided to record music under the name. The song told the story of truck drivers forming a convoy to protest the speed limit, delivered entirely in CB, radio slang most people could barely understand. The label buried it as a deep album track, convinced nobody would get it. Disc jockeys pulled it out anyway, and phone lines lit up with requests. It topped both the country and pop charts and sold over 2 million copies.
Living long-haired friends of Jesus in a chartreuse microbus.
When you first heard all that trucker lingo crackling through your speakers, did you have any idea what they were actually saying, or did you just go along for the ride? Bill Mumy and Robert Hamer recorded this deliberately absurd track in 1978. The entire song revolved around fish heads doing everyday human activities like attending baseball games and being seen at parties. It made absolutely no logical sense, and that was entirely the point.
The evening floating in the soup.
It became one of the most requested tracks on the Dr. Demento radio show, and later gained a wider audience through an early MTV music video directed by Bill Paxton. It never climbed the mainstream charts, but became one of the most beloved cult novelty recordings of the era, proving that sometimes pure absurdity is its own reward.
In line to see the boy King.
By 1978, Steve Martin was selling out arenas and hosting Saturday Night Live regularly. He brought a song idea inspired by the Treasures of Tutankhamun exhibit that was touring American museums and drawing millions of visitors. Martin performed it in full Egyptian costume with a saxophonist emerging from a golden sarcophagus covered in body paint to blow a solo. The lyrics were gloriously ridiculous, claiming the pharaoh was born in Arizona and moved to Babylonia.
The ladies love this style.
Released as a single, it sold over 1 million copies and reached number 17 on the Billboard chart, proving that a comedian in a headdress could outsell half the serious acts on the radio.
At lunchtime, you can always find me at the Whole Earth Vitamin Bar.
Larry Gross was a Texas folk singer who wrote a confession about a health food enthusiast who secretly binges on junk food when nobody is watching. By day, the narrator preaches wheat germ and organic vegetables. By night, he raids the kitchen for candy bars and fast food burgers. It perfectly captured the guilt of the growing health food movement in the 70s. The song climbed to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 and sold over 1 million copies.
Full of Pringles potato chips and a ding-dong by my head.
Have you ever caught yourself preaching about eating healthy while hiding something guilty in the back of your pantry? That is exactly why this song still hits home decades later.
In a big dish of beef chow mein.
The song started as a joke when Phil Everly suggested Zevon write something inspired by an old werewolf film he had seen on television. Zevon and 2 collaborators knocked it out in about 15 minutes, trading ridiculous lines back and forth. They tried at least 7 different arrangements before landing on the right one, with Mick Fleetwood on drums and John McVie on bass. Zevon objected when his label chose it as the lead single, but they overruled him. It It peaked at number 21 and became his only top 40 hit. The BBC later voted its opening line as the greatest first line in any song. Zevon once said he did not understand why it became a hit, but it was better to be remembered for something than for nothing.
Weavers who sit and smile and twiddle their thumbs and toes and their cutters to take me away.
Jerry Samuels was a New York songwriter who had spent years writing serious music without success. In 1966, he tried something completely different. He recorded a manic spoken word track about a man losing his mind after his dog runs away, delivered in an increasingly unhinged voice over nothing but a drum beat and footsteps. The song had no melody and no real instruments beyond percussion.
Cooked your food, I cleaned your house, and this is how you pay me back for.
Radio stations picked it up almost as a joke, but listeners became obsessed. It shot to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in just 2 weeks. Mental health organizations protested, and pressure mounted until Warner Brothers pulled it from shelves. Despite being banned, it had already sold over 1 million copies and became one of the most talked about novelty records of the 60s, paving the way for the absurd hits that would dominate the 70s.
I was tired of my lady. We'd been together.
Rupert Holmes needed one more track to finish an album and wrote a playful story about a bored man who answers a personal ad only to discover the mysterious woman is his own partner. The twist ending gave the whole thing a lighthearted charm that audiences loved instantly. Radio disc jockeys latched onto the tropical drink reference and started calling it the Pina Colada Song, a nickname that stuck permanently. It hit number 1 in the final weeks of 1979, becoming one of the last chart toppers of the decade.
That you like pina coladas and get.
Holmes was frustrated. His clever story became known forever by a cocktail ingredient, but with millions of copies sold, he could not argue with the results. Walter Murphy was a 23-year-old who asked what would happen if Beethoven liked disco. He reimagined the famous opening of the Fifth Symphony with a pulsing dance beat, synthesizers, and funky bass lines, playing nearly every instrument himself. It hit number 1 in 1976 and later appeared on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, which went on to sell over 40 million copies worldwide. No other classical meets disco experiment ever came close to matching its impact. The song became a time capsule of that unique moment when disco ruled the world and absolutely anything seemed possible if you just added the right beat. These songs started as jokes and ended up making history. The 70s were a time when the strangest ideas got a fair shot on the radio, and the silliest song turned out to be the one nobody could forget. Which one brings back the strongest memory for you? Tell us in the comments, and share this with someone who still believes music should make you laugh as much as it makes you feel.